Hey guys, I wanted to do an update video of my plants after the deep freeze we had here in Vancouver. We live on Bowen Island, BC, so our low we got here was -10 Celsius in our area. Other parts of the island got down to -12 and -13 depending on where on the island it was. So I'm just going to go over some of the plants that some of you have been asking about and give you an update how they look so far. Of course, their condition from now to spring might change as well, so I'll do another update video in the spring. So let's start here with this Camrops Humulus varicifera. This is known to be a very cold hardy palm. In fact, known to be more cold hardy than the regular Humulus. And as you can see, the fronds look perfectly fine. So I'm very pleased about that. Right here I have a Tracheocarpus Fortuna. This is my smaller one I have in the yard. It looks pretty battered up by the wind and the snow, but in terms of damage to the fronds, I don't see any freeze damage or anything like that. So this will most likely just be fine in the spring. And there's a few center spears there coming up. Over here we have a needle palm, Rapiphyldum hystrix, and it looks perfectly fine. And these, as some of you may know, are the most cold hardy palmate palm there is. So absolutely no issues with this one, and the center spears look healthy. I also have several Yucca rostrata in the yard. This is my smaller one, and again, absolutely no ill effects from the cold. Over here I have some Yucca Gloriosa Variagata. They're looking pretty good. No problems with the newer growth up top. Some of the lower growth looks a little tattered, and you can see a little bit of possibly a little bit of a fungal infection on the bottom leaves, but again, those get trimmed out in the spring, so it's not a big issue. Over here, I snuck a Camrops in the summer because I had nowhere else to put it. And I snuck it up here, and as you can see, this is a Camrops humulus, and it doesn't look so great. The fronds are bent over, probably from the weight of the snow. And if you look at the fronds, they're very dark green. And that usually happens when there's some freeze damage to the fronds. So they're all looking very dark green. There's a few spears in there, which I'll have to test in the spring and see if they pull up. What I'll be doing from now till spring for all the palms that are affected, in my opinion, by the freeze, is I'll be putting some hydrogen peroxide in there weekly into the spear, into the center point of the new growth where the spears are coming up. So that will help fight any fungal infections that may develop from any rot as a result of the cold. So I must say the Humulus didn't fare as good as the rest of the palms in my yard. Well, let me show you a few more here. So this is another Camrops humulus, and again, it looks a little damaged by the freeze. You can see here the brown kind of color to this emerging frond. And also over here, the color change between the green, that appears to be freeze damage. And then the rest of the palms are very dark green. I did stuff a whole bunch of leaves into the growth points here, hoping that would protect it somewhat during the winter. So that may help. What may end up happening is the fronds will turn brown and I'll have to cut them off, but hopefully the new growth will come up healthy, and will come up from all the growth points around the palm. So I'm hoping that will happen for the spring. But in general, the Camrops didn't do so well. The humulus palms, they didn't do so well in this -10 freeze that we had here. Another Cerifera, and again, absolutely no issues with this palm. Looks happy, healthy, all the fronds look good, new growth coming up from the center. Another rostrata, looks as happy as can be, no issues whatsoever. Here's a cordyline australis. I'm not 100% sure this one's fine. It's the foliage looks pretty good, pretty stiff. Usually when they're damaged, they'll fold over. This one so far is looking okay, but I will give it until the spring until I make a final verdict on that one. And if it does die back at the top, they usually do send out new growth from the bottom, so very rarely does the whole plant die. This is a Eucalyptus here. This is a fresh one I planted in the summer. This is a very cold hardy variety, Nipophilia I believe it's called, and it's very cold tolerant, and as you can tell it's just fine. Here's a Phormium species. This one actually looks pretty good. It is underneath a big cedar tree, so that may have helped it a bit with protection. Some Yucca species here, I think, or these are color guards. They're fine. Here's a Hordeoline indivisa, which I got in the summer, and as you can see, all this foliage on the outside looks pretty beat up, but the center spear doesn't look too bad, and it still feels firm to me, so I think it might come back. These other leaves might die back, and it might come back with some new fresh growth in the spring. Here's another large Phormium I had growing here by the Tracheocarpus, and it doesn't look so good. It's mostly snow weight damage from what I can tell, not so much freeze damage. But again, wherever it's bent over, chances are those leaves won't go straight up again. So in the spring, I'll most likely have to do a big pruning on it, and then it'll hopefully send out some new growth. So this is my Tasmanian tree fern. I had it covered with a tarp, and then I had a whole bunch of leaves, maple leaves, put into the center crown, and then all along the roots. So this thing is completely covered in leaves. As you can tell, the fronds have all turned dark, and they're most likely freeze damaged, and they will die. But in the spring, I have no doubt when I remove all these leaves and expose the trunk, it will send out some new fronds. So as this thing grows larger, I'll have to probably end up cutting all the fronds off for winter, and then wrapping it with bubble wrap, and then protect the crown really well as it gets bigger. So this is probably the last year I'm going to be doing the tarp method, which normally works fine, but when it gets so cold and for so long, like our freeze was about 2 weeks long, got down to -10 and then hovered around -5 for about a week or so. That's cold enough to really damage these guys. So it is beneficial to have them wrapped entirely, and that's what I'll be doing as it gets bigger. This is my pineapple guava, fajoja, and other than, looks like I got some broken branches here from the snow weight. Other than that, the thing looks fine and didn't get affected at all from the freeze. I also have some giant bamboo here. This is a Vivax bamboo, Phyllostachys. There's no problems whatsoever with that bamboo. And again, I put a whole bunch of leaves on top because it's in a container. I put them on top here onto the roots to kind of insulate the roots somewhat. That I think was very important. So I had some plants on the deck here that didn't get protected. I would have protected them if I were here, but I was away in Hawaii for about a month. So this freeze just happened to happen when I was away, so there's no way I could have done it. So this is a rosemary and a gardenia and a type of rhodo, and so far those appear to be fine. I have no doubt that those pots froze, so there might be root damage, and that might not show for a while. This is a rostrata, again looking perfectly fine. And then I have a trachea here and a camrops. Now, this trachea was inside my house because I got someone to move it inside, but this camrops humilis was outside the entire time during this freeze, and the only thing I had done to protect it before I left was put leaves around the base on the soil. And if you look at it and you compare it to the other humilis I have in the yard, it actually looks pretty good. And I'm surprised because in theory, this one should have suffered the most being in a pot. And again, the damage might show itself in the next month or so, or maybe 2 months, but so far it looks completely untouched. Now, one theory I have is that the soil was pretty dry in it because it is under the cover of my house. So if that's the case, then it might just be fine going forward. I'll probably, if I end up losing the Camerops humilis in the yard, I'll probably plant this one in their place. So this is my Waggy, my Ragnarianis. It suffered quite a bit. I'm quite surprised. The fronds look very dark green. You can tell that they got frost damage. And it's pretty universal amongst all the fronds. And the center spear looks pretty dark as well. So in my opinion, these are not as hardy as the Fortunae. And this one really might suffer some frond losses in the spring and perhaps center spear pull as well. So I'll have to definitely apply the hydrogen peroxide to it for the next little while. And hopefully we don't get any more freezes coming between now and April. So I'm quite surprised at that. Hopefully as this palm matures, it might get some more hardiness to it, but it's definitely, from my experience, not faring as well as the regular Fortunae to the cold. So this is probably my favorite palm in the garden, and this is a Jubea, or Chilean wine palm, that I planted in the summer. And all I had done to protect it when I left for my trip is I piled leaves around the base, like I do to all my palms. And I had put some old school C9 Christmas lights around the trunk and around the center spear area. And I don't know if that helped or not, or if that did absolutely nothing, but this palm's looking perfectly fine. It's got a little bit of damage that happened after I planted it. I believe I over fertilized it. So this damage is actually from the summer. But other than that, it's shooting up 3 new spears. There's this one that's opening. There's another one right beside it. And then there's a third coming up. So I've known Jubeas to be quite cold hardy. Some people say even down to -15. It only saw about -10 here. But if that's the case, this is a winner of a palm for cold climates. And as you know, Jubeas are just a fantastic palm. When they get bigger, they look so stunning. So I'm really stoked about that. This was actually the one palm I was worried about while I was away, and it looks like it did just fine. This is a Loquat. I got 2 of them in the yard, and this one I staked up. The other one I didn't. So the one I didn't stake up, the snow weight pushed it down. And other than that, it's undamaged. And this one here looks perfectly fine. So Loquats are quite hardy. And the only thing is, if they fruit for you, you might lose the fruit if it's anything below -5 or something like that. But this was just fine after -10 and 2 weeks of freeze. My Musa Baju, probably all those pseudo stems that I left will bend down and melt down right to the ground. I did put a nice pile of leaves around the base, so I have no doubt that this will sprout out new growth in the spring, but I doubt it will be from the old pseudo stems just because of how cold it got. This is my larger Tracheocarpus, and similar to the other smaller Tracheocarpus, it's got some bent leaflets on the fronds, and they look a little tattered. That's no doubt from the snow and from the wind. But the fronds have a good color to them. I don't see any freeze damage, and the center growth looks good. So I have absolutely no worries about the Tracheocarpus Fortuna being just fine after the freeze. And right next to it underneath is a Schlafera taiwaniana, and it is perfectly fine as well. And if you want a really cool tropical looking plant for the yard, I highly recommend Schlafera taiwaniana and Delavei. I got both in the yard, and they can take wicked cold temps. And as you can see, it's perfectly fine after -10 Celsius in our yard. Over here, I planted a very small, is a Tetrapanics, and it amazingly still has its new growth leaf on it. So at -10, looks like the old leaves kind of melted down, but the stalk is good and the new leaf is good. So Tetrapanics, another winner for cold climates. And even if it were to melt down to the root, most Tetrapanics will come back from the root and send up another shoot. So I had all my 1 gallon Tracheocarpus Fortuna palms just along the greenhouse here outside under the cover of the eaves. And I have no doubt that the pots froze during this deep freeze. And if you look at some of the fronds, you can see the dark patches in it. So that is definitely freeze damage. So I don't know what to expect with these. They could die completely, or they could just lose some leaflets and push out new ones. I'd be surprised if that's the case, because again, these pots froze entirely and they were on the moist side as well. So in my greenhouse, I do have a heater, and I kept the temperature in my greenhouse at about 10 Celsius. It may have gotten down to about 5 Celsius when it was -10 outside, but I put all the sensitive plants in here that I didn't want to lose. So my Brugmansia in here, my obsidian banana, my alocasia and calocasia, my strawberry guava. I have the Washingtonia in here. I have all my bananas in here. I have the cycad in here. My agaves are in here. I also have my Brahia armata, which I didn't want to lose. And my avocados. So everything in here will be fine, obviously. And I just had someone come from time to time and water them, because they are still somewhat actively growing in the greenhouse. Here I got my Arbutus marina. So this is not as cold tolerant as the Arbutus that grow native here to British Columbia. And if you look real close, there is some freeze damage to some of the leaves. But all in all, I think this will recover. It's already becoming quite a nice tree, so I really hope that it pulls through in the spring. Here I got some olive trees that are in pots. I put a whole bunch of leaves on top of the pots just to help insulate the soil a bit. And from first glance, the olives seem perfectly fine. Up there I have a big Eucalyptus archeri. So it's a Eucalyptus gunnii subspecies archeri. And it's about 20 feet tall now. And there is a bit of damage to the leaves. I must say, there's a little bit of evidence that they were affected by the cold. But right now, I don't think it will defoliate or anything worse. So I will update you guys in the spring and let you know. Right now, just looking at the new growth here, there may have been some damage to the new growth, but it's hard to tell with eucalyptus. Sometimes they take a while to show damage. So this is my citrus bed, and it's under cover, as you can see, but otherwise it's not protected, and it's in a container. And unfortunately, the only protection I provided before I went on my trip was the C9 lights wrapped around each citrus. And obviously the fruit is toast at -10 Celsius. And the leaves look pretty battered. So I don't know, I may have killed my citrus. Or what it will do is it will drop these damaged leaves and send out new ones. So that's the best case scenario. This is a dormant pomegranate, a dormant dwarf apricot. Those will be fine. Here's a Kishu mandarin, and again, same as the Satsuma next door to it, it's got some damage to the foliage. This is a peach. Again, it's dormant, it will be just fine. Some Meyer lemon, and again, same thing with the foliage being really damaged, and of course the fruit is toast. And then my Persian lime looks the worst. I don't know, I might lose it, or it might defoliate and send out new growth. We'll see in the spring. But if I was here, I would have protected them better. I would have put frost cloth on them and put some more heat source on them. But at -10, and you're not in the country, it's pretty hard to do anything. So maybe the C9s helped a little bit, maybe not. But we'll see in the spring what happens with these guys. And finally, the last plant that I'll update you guys on, or maybe the last two plants. This is a Tracheocarpus Manipur, and I only know of a handful of people that grow these in Vancouver, and they're all kind of new to us. And it looks like they all suffered from this cold, much more so than Fortuna did. And it kind of looks like similar damage to the Camrops humilis, what they suffered. So they're definitely not as hardy as the Fortuna from what I can see here. And I'm really hoping this palm pulls through. I do have a pile of leaves around the trunk. So I'm gonna do the same peroxide treatment to the center spear on this palm. And hopefully, I'll cross my fingers, in the spring it starts shooting up some new growth. And going forward, hopefully I'll be around for further freezes. I'll try and provide some protection to this palm as it gets bigger. Hopefully as it gets bigger, it will be a little more hardy, but definitely not as hardy as Fortuna from first glance. And then this is the Schlafera della Vei that I was talking about earlier, and it's perfectly fine. And those are incredible plants, and the della Vei are actually a little more cold tolerant than the Taiwaniana. Anyways, that's it for now. Hope you guys liked that update. I'm a little sad about some of the plants in my yard and the state they're in, but such is life. And I'm pretty set on growing things in my yard that I don't have to work too hard to protect every year. So I'll see what makes it this year, and I'll make adjustments for next year. Hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching.